Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Dorma C510 LRC 626. This is a lever passage set. That's what a lever passage set looks like. Weighs 3.21 pound. I have one removed here from the packaging and all of its constituent parts so that we can go over the entire lock. The name Dorma is synonymous with a comprehensive offering of builders, commercial builders hardware, whether it be lock sets, exit devices, door closers. They have an interesting offering of pocket pivots, or Harmon hinges they're known as, and a variety of other items. One thing that I like about Dorma is not necessarily product related, but there are so many different facets of what to like from a manufacturer. And you might like one thing but don't like another thing. One thing that I in particular very much like is their catalog, in the sense that they have a very well developed how to order section. So the how to order section is used in many different ways. So the way I use the how to order section is, first and foremost, quite honestly, it's a way by which to prevent me from forgetting to specify something. They have this part, then this part, then this part, then this part, then this part, and on and on and on. And below or above, they will basically give you a quick summary of what the options are. And then as the catalog lays out further, you can then draw to each section for further information. If you get to the column of strike options, okay, you're not sure what part number is what and you don't have it memorized, flip back to that section in that catalog. And I think the only thing I wish that they did was give you the page number in the little box, you know, to refer to it quickly. And we're going to get to the product brochure. So that's one thing that I like a lot about Dorma. It's an easier company to dive into in order to specify something. I mean, if you look at the title of this video, it's just the way that I ordered the lock. And, you know, frankly, you've got the series, the part number, the series and the function, the trim, the finish, the strike, the latch, the thickness of the door. What's not there is the hand of the door, nor is there the fastener package. So you can keep going on for just a grade 2. I think this is grade 2. For just a simple grade 2 lever passage. I mean, there's, you know, this is a piece of imported, you know, hardware from overseas. There's not much to it. It's a grade 2 imported cylindrical passage is a grade 2 imported cylindrical passage is a grade 2 imported cylindrical passage. But why this one? You know, why use this? And it gets beyond just the quality of the product. It's what I was saying earlier. It's the ability to use their catalog. It's the ability, number 2, to draw on technical support. And there's a particular gentleman at Dorma who is tops. He's aces, as my father would say. He's aces. Responsive thoroughly. I discovered earlier today that I had asked him the same question over a period of 4 years. And I thought to myself, that gentleman is a saint, because anyone else would have said, Rich, I've answered this question. What a great resource for Dorma. Absolutely superior. And to him I say thank you. Then the product, of course. You've got product representation. You've got technical support. You know, lead time, yeah, I would think that this is on their short, quick to ship list. This order also had an entry function that was keyed into a prior system, so the factory was able to pull naturally the keying record. So this is, they marked it AA151, and that's actually incorrect because this is a level 2 system. This is actually 151AA. It's the 151st change under the AA master key. And it was really great when I saw the keying information come on the first order, which was 150 locks. They wrote that progression in rotating constant, which was great to see a manufacturer write something in rotating constant. Many of them might. Maybe they all do. But I was expecting total position progression to see that. And, you know, for a level 2 system, rotating constant's the preferred way, from what I understand, to proceed. Anyway, about this passage set. This is a C-Series. It is a 10 function. Okay, I've got it basically put together here. Not a lot to say about such a lock, except that there's always a lot to say about such a lock, I suppose. So I snapped it together to take a couple of pictures. I will tell you initially that I'm not thrilled with how many screws are in this package. I already don't like how many screws are in here. 2 for the strike, 2 for the latch. You've got, you know, that tells me that we're mounting a plate to the body. We're screwing something to the door. So let's take a look. I'm going to get my pin release tool just poked out of the edge of the package so that I can get my interior lever off so that we can take this lock apart and figure it out. Yeah, that dastardly plate that's going to take 4 screws right there. You can tell that immediately. Anyway, we'll get to that. Whatever. It's not a deal breaker. Okay, so one thing. So what does impress me first is that it seems to have a nice lever return. That lever comes up pretty snappy. Okay, pretty snappy. I don't think you'll have any trouble with that. It's stiffer than average, and I would think that, you know, you would want that. You know, even getting it moved down a little bit, it snaps back up. So that spring is really already preloaded, I would imagine, inside this spring cage that's inside of here in the rosette. This is what's called the cylindrical lock. A cylindrical lock is going to have a latch that will basically engage the exterior of the chassis of the lock. Tubular locks are where the spindle goes through the center of the latch bolt. More of a tube sort of presentation, from what I understand. And with this lock, you're going to have the business end of this. And I don't see immediately how we adjust for door thickness, but that is certainly going to be referenced in the installation instructions. And I would, obviously, this is going to come out from the factory as preset for 1 3/4 inches. We got 2 sets of ridges here, or teats maybe, and here. Not exactly sure what the plan is with that. Those are going to be explained in the installation instruction, because from what I can tell, those are going to make contact with the face of the door. Maybe they're meant to just compress inside when you make contact. We'll see if that's discussed. This is the first time I'm reviewing this C-Series lock from Dorma. Their latch bolt is typical and common. This is a passage, so it's a spring latch. There's no guarded possibility on this. This has the indication, the stamping for UL, and a capital letter F. Fun fact, you can have a lowercase f and a capital letter F. Whatever they're stamped is different. Older locks are going to have lowercase f's because that was what was called neutral pressure. It was the standard by which doors were tested in fire applications. Capital letter F means positive pressure. So neutral is lowercase and uppercase F is positive pressure, which I understand to be the governing standard nowadays. Marked UL, if you're putting hardware on a fire-rated door, almost all of your hardware must not only be listed, meaning it's been tested. There's a report in some laboratory's filing cabinet that says, good to go, you've passed the test. To state that correctly, the hardware has been subjected to a fire test and found to be compliant. There's evidence of that at the testing laboratory, and almost all hardware needs to bear visual evidence that it is indeed compliant with the requirements of the test. If you try to put this on a fire door, any lock, it has to have some sort of visual, generally not concealed evidence, and that's lock manufacturers will put that on the face. You're not going to sell a lock that's not listed for use on fire doors if you want to install them on fire doors. Not everything has to be labeled. A hinge, a ball bearing ferrous-based or stainless steel hinge does not have to be labeled, but it has been tested, and evidence of that can be produced upon demand for whomever might be requesting it, an authority having jurisdiction. You need to be careful when you're getting into spring hinges. Those must always be labeled after they've been listed and therefore tested. Door viewers have to have evidence of that. To see that on a door viewer, you have to physically remove the door viewer from the door. So you know, be mindful of that. That's why that information is on the edge of the latch bolt. This is going to be a 2 1/4 inch tall, 1 1/8 wide. That's 2 3/4. You look at enough latch bolts in the world during your time, you'll be able to see it by eye. Nowhere on here will measure 2 3/4, but it will basically measure from the edge to where the chassis starts at about 1 3/4, because that whole diameter is 2 1/8, and if you take half of that, it's about 1 inch. 1 3/4 plus 1 inch puts you about 2 3/4 to the center line. Okay, so you can tell those. Plus, it's unusual to have 1 1/8 wide latch on a 2 3/8 back set. They do exist, but I doubt they exist in the Dorma line, or in the Dorma line for this lock. You have your inside mounting plate that's here. I've shown that. Then you also have your inside. How many screws does this thing take? Yeah, you have your inside rose and then your scalp plate. Okay, you have your spring cage mechanism buried inside of here. Obviously, that interior lever, it's going to reside. That little gizmo there is what catches the prep in the lever so that you can engage that. And that's what gives you your lever trim. There's no other way to put that on. That has to seat right inside of there. Okay, some sort of die-cast zinc, I would imagine, is what this is. Zinc is very common for use in locks because it's inexpensive, it's abundant, it can be finished well. There's this, for instance, this lever is probably made of zinc, and it has a nice finish. We specified 626, but this is not 626. This would be US 26D, or it would be the best way to probably call it, because it's not made of brass. Then we have our 4 7/8 strike. That's the strike that was specified for this project. 4 7/8 tall. You're going to see that in typical hollow metal applications, hollow metal frame applications. Overall width of the strike is about 1 13/16 inches. However, that's not how strikes are measured. They're measured from the center line of the hole to the edge of the lip, and this is about 1 1/4 inches. And the 1 1/4 inches, 1 3/16, 1 5/16, that's the Swiss Army knife of sizes for strikes. That's going to fit practically every application. Not every, but practically every. Is it the right size for practically every application? Possibly not. The length of the lip does need to be considered when you are specifying lock sets. You don't want to specify the wrong strike, or you'll have a problem in that the door won't close, or the latch will prematurely hit the jamb, whatever it might be. Now, also what's included after this tremendous quantity of screws, there appear to be too many in here, would be my guess. As far as I'm concerned, there are 4 too many, but there are 2 in here that I don't think you're going to use. Just looking at what's in here. You have your pin release tool. That's going to allow you to remove the lever. You'll want to hang on to that. You're going to have 4 of these long machine screws, and I believe that you're going to have too many of these. I don't know if that's by design or if it's just simply a mistake. You're going to have 2 screws for that 4 7/8 strike. You're going to have 2 screws for the latch bolt. Okay. There are then 2 more 832 combination screws. I don't know what those are for. Those are probably not meant to be in there. They're probably there. I bet you that they come standard in the screw package in case you elect a strike that would be a full lip strike or a T strike. Then you would need those 832s. And then you would have the 1224 combination screws not needed. So their screw pack is probably standardized. And then these 2 little stubby machine screws, that's going to be for that mounting plate directly to the chassis of the lock, which we're going to go over. A template and installation instructions, which are linked to down below. And what I'd like to do now is switch to the camera view so we can do a review, a mental review of all the parts after what we've just gone over. Okay, so the lock that we're looking at here has that's the product brochure that we have. We have the installation instructions and the template, and all 3 of these are linked to down below. And let's do what we said, the installation instructions. Not a lot here. It's a 2-page document, and covers all functions. So for your passage function, you won't need... you're not going to need anything on page 2. That's always nice when you don't need so much information. Now, overall exploded parts view, I always start with these because I want to make sure I have everything before I drive to the job site and start installing stuff. You've got your chassis, 7 lock assembly they call it. You've got your latch bolt. You have your part 12, your mounting plate. Then what they do call it a spring cage. You have your scalp plate or your finish rose, part 16, the inside rose. You have your inside lever. Part 17 is the lever insert. That is indeed in the lever, and it is in each of the 2 levers. You need those in there to fill up that space. The lock will still work without it, but you wouldn't actually have a fire-rated assembly if you did not have that installed, because the installation instructions call for that. So be mindful to install those. Now, there are indeed part 13, which are the 1032 by 1.5" screws, and then part 15, the 1032 by 1.5" screws. I don't think we're going to need quite all of those. Those stubby screws that I mentioned earlier might just work fine. Or maybe they won't. Yeah, they work fine. Yeah, so a couple of screws here that I'm not seeing where they want us to use those immediately. You don't have part 9, the latch face filler, because you don't need it. This client doesn't need it because he has an 1.1 wide. You would use the latch face filler if you had a 1-inch wide latch bolt with an 1.1 wide prep in the door. You'll take note that this is a unit that requires a modified 161 prep, a modified cylindrical lock prep with holes at 12 and 6. That'll be on the template when we get there. Tools required: cross screwdriver. We would call it a Phillips, and they want a flathead screwdriver as well. There might be a need for that. Let's see. Now, once the door is prepped, and we'll look at the template in a moment, the first thing to always do is to install the latch. This sleeve is there when you have a 1-inch drilled hole in the edge of your door, which is going to be very common. Should you have a 15/16 or a 7/8 hole drilled in the edge of the door with an 1.1 wide, you can pull that sleeve off. That would not be a problem to remove that. But you're probably going to have a 1-inch wide prep. Okay, so latch bolt goes in first. Lock assembly, adjust for door thickness. To adjust the lock assembly for door thickness, align the center of the chassis with the center of the latch. Yes, that's normal. This is the chassis here, the center line of that. Now remove the outside lever and separate the rose assembly from the adjustment plate. Okay, so that's really the heart of the matter here. We have to pull the inside unit off. Pardon me, the outside rose assembly has to come off. Let's switch to the screen view and take a closer look at that. Okay, so, first of all, do you need to change anything? And the answer is probably no way. Center of that needs to be at about 7/8 of an inch, and it is. 7/8 is 1/2 inch and 3/4, so we don't need to adjust this. However, let's say that you did need to adjust it. Your pin tool is going to go in that hole, and that will depress the spring-loaded tab, and you'll be able to pull that lever off. Our rose assembly is going to come off. And right now, this plate is on a threaded stem. So as I rotate that is where I'm going to be able to adjust my thickness. I don't know the range. I would imagine 1 3/8 to possibly 2 inch, or maybe 1 7/8. So we're just going to put that back on the way we found it, because there's no reason to adjust it beyond what it's already adjusted to. And one nice feature that I do like, these die-cast projections fit directly into the chassis housing. and really, really serve. That's a great design, in my opinion. Here's why. Your inside mounting is going to screw through the through bolt posts. That's going to lock into the outside housing. The outside housing, as a result of these projections, then engages the chassis. Talk about not rotating on the door at all. I mean, if you didn't have these posts, like very early locks, early mid-90s, when ADA was passed, and then over the next couple of years, it was like, whoa, this is federal law. I mean, I'm telling you, it went overnight from people ordering knobs to people ordering levers. Overnight. Which was obviously an overreaction, but when something is new and unknown, there's an overreaction. Right now we're going through COVID-19. Literally, this is week 3, and there's the whole run on toilet paper. Okay? You can only use so much toilet paper a day, from what I understand. So the point of the matter is, I very much like that design, and I'm not recalling another design that allows me to tie every component together. The inside is attached to the mounting plate. Well, actually, the inside lever is not attached directly to the mounting plate, but the point is the portion that mounts the lock on the door has captive this would be the chassis, or the heart of the lock, whether you want to call it an assembly or a chassis. That just really engages there and prevents that from spinning. That's a nice feature. But I was saying early about ADA and levers. There were levers that didn't have through bolts at all, and there still are, or they're optional. And you would really have the chassis getting rotated, and then the latch bolt. Someone says, "Oh, the latch bolt doesn't pull back," and you go to the job site, and you see the lever is literally like this because the chassis has been forcefully rotated, and that literally broke its connection. Through bolts help that tremendously. But this system, you have to argue, is smarter because you have the chassis itself engaged mechanically. Okay, so I like that a lot. So anyway, we've got it set to the right depth. You always want to pull on the lever. You can see the first time it came off. You want to make sure that it's physically on. You don't want it to come off in your hand unexpectedly. So we've put that back together. Let's hop back now to the installation instructions. Okay, so we've adjusted our door thickness. We've talked about the linkage between the outside rows and the assembly itself. Once you've rotated that, simply reassemble it just like I did. Once you're set to the right thickness, you'll then install the lock through the hole, and this is really the important part. You want to make sure that you're engaged exactly like they show it here. This is the outer portion of the lock chassis. This is the retractor hub that's shown here in white. This T shape, if you just think, or this H shape, is what sticks out of the edge of the latch bolt. So this gray area literally comes out of the body here. It has to fit into the retracting hub. It would be nice if there was a second line here, okay? And then these little tangs that sneak out of the end of the latch bolt need to lock into the outer rim of the chassis itself. That's the goal. Not the goal. That's what you have to have. That's mandatory, that it connects together. That's the linkage. Once you have that done, all you need to do now is install the inside portion. And this is the part that I don't love. There's far too many screws here that I wish we didn't have to deal with. Oh, I get it. Yeah, I see what we're doing. Okay. Oh yeah. The inside spring cage is connected to the inside mounting plate. Is connected to. Oh yeah. Let's see here now. And I will of course be showing all of this to you. Sorry, just bear with me. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, so they're basically showing us they want us to have Okay, so it took a moment to stare at it, but they're showing us you have two options here, a through-bolt chassis and then a non-through-bolt chassis. We're doing, of course, the through-bolt chassis. Those tiny stubby screws would be used for a non-through-bolt chassis. So this is pretty simple and straightforward. You're going to basically use You're going to use the long screws here, and they're going to run into here, here, and then into this little guy right here. Then the mounting plate will be attached to the door holding the lock in. Then your inside spring cage will come over. These screws will then go into your through bolts. So let's switch back to the camera view and take a look at that. Okay, so we have a through bolt assembly is what it is that we are dealing with. So the mounting plate's going to go on first. Okay, we're going to run this screw into this small hole here and here, and they're going to go into the chassis here, and they're going to connect to the inside tapped portion of our post that's here. That's going to lock that plate in. Then, once the plate is on, you'll have a screw here and here. Then you'll run the other screw through here, through the mounting plate, into your post, like that. You'll tighten that up. There are 4 screws holding that all together. If you have a non-through bolt assembly, you're then going to use the stubby screw, and you're going to connect the inside spring assembly to the tapped hole that's here. That's what that's for. That's why it's a thicker, fatter screw. And now we've used all the screws that we need to install this. Looking at the rest of the installation instructions, we get to basically step 4, which the last thing to do is to take your rows. You know, notice there's a small little preparation here that's going to fit. You'll have 2 of them, one here, 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 here. That will all fit together, and then you just rotate the rows, and it's going to kind of just fit over these little areas here, and you'll hear it click, click, and you'll be in tight. It'll be on there, but you can just grab that and rotate it, and you'll be able to pull it off. Sometimes it takes a little bit of Killer Kowalski to get that to move, but it will indeed move. That fits together very nicely. Now, step 5 is installing the strike. We're assuming that your hardware, your frame, is already prepped for the material. You could certainly have a 4 7/8 strike in a wood frame. You know, obviously a hollow metal frame is where you're mostly going to see that. All of page 2 pertains to the keyed functions, your 70 function, 80 function, obviously a 53 function. They're using Schlage numbers there, or maybe they're Dorma numbers, and Schlage stole them from Dorma. Funny, Dorma and Schlage are basically German by origin. And the bottom line is, as I look at the rest of the stuff, really what they're talking about is how to remove and replace the lever if you need to rekey the lock, things of that nature. There's a dummy installation that's mentioned there, which is just a single dummy. That's surface mounted in a hole that will go through to bolt it together, and then a couple of small screws to the face. Not much to that at all. Now, the next document is the template and then the product brochure. Let's switch back to the screen view. Okay, so the next document is indeed the template, and they do a nice job. They show you that you could prep this for a beveled edge door or a flat edge door. And be mindful that the back set is a reference from the edge of the door to the center of the hole, but it's really a reference to the center line of the edge of the door. And that's how you don't really care if you have a bevel or not when you're talking about back set, because on a flat edge door, the distance from right here to right here is 2 3/4, and from the center of the door thickness right here to right here is 2 3/4. That's what you're measuring. If you ever took a latch bolt in your hand, and this doesn't really do it much, but that latch bolt will tolerate the small amount of movement necessary to go from being flat to being at this angle, which happens to be 3 degrees, by the way. Or they call it 1/8 and 2. For every 1/8 of an inch that this door thickness changes by bevel, for every 2 inches in thickness that it changes in a relationship of 1/8 of an inch. I've just murdered that. Let's do this. Here's my door edge. One-eighth. So that angle is equal to 1/8 for every 2 inch here. Okay. So if you have an 1 3/4 thick door, the distance from here to here is not going to be quite an eighth. It'll be just a little bit less. But that's what 1/8 in 2 refers to. Bevel on doors 100 years ago were far more aggressive than 3 degree or 1/8 and 2. They may have been a quarter and 2. They were far more aggressive, which is a very unsightly door. When you have such a heavy bevel, you can spot it a mile away, and it will give your hardware fits if you have a bevel that's heavier than the prescribed 1/8 and 2, or again, it's 3 degree is what that is. You do have to drill your hole at 12 and 6. That's going to be a 5/16 hole, 1 3/8 from the center line. That happens to match Schlage. That's by no mistake. If you had the Schlage tool for doing that, it would be, I think, an M204. Forgive me, Dorma, if you make one. I imagine that you do. I'm sure Dorma has a fixture like this. Very easy. Steel bushings. It's going to locate those holes for you very, very easily. I absolutely recommend using those. Makes the job super simple. Page 2 shows a metal door application. I should have mentioned this is a wood door. Metal door application is the same business. You probably aren't going to have to think about drilling anything naturally in your metal door. Hopefully not. But if you had to, reach out. I have deep experience on how to prep steel doors for hardware, and that's our template. The only thing to mention about the strike is the top of the door to the center of the lock is the underside of the header to the center of the strike minus 1/8 of an inch. So your door dimension will be 1/8 of an inch smaller, measuring from the top. The next thing to get into is the product brochure, and there's not too much here because this is just a typical grade 2 lock. But even with a easy lock like this, it's still very well put together. So let's take a look. Features, specs, locks, trim options, functions, options for the lock body itself, latches and strikes. So you've got an LR lever, an LC lever, and an LG. We're doing an LRC on our project because the LR is the lever, but the C is going to refer to the rows. Very simple construction, not a lot to go wrong here. Okay, it's grade 2, which means it's passed 500,000 cycles. Exceptional reliability, finest materials, enhanced durability, blah blah blah. You can read all of that. That's good. You need to know that. But there it is. Optional through-bolted chassis for additional strength and increased resistance to vibration. So what they're saying is you can do an optional, and I didn't... Oh, yeah, okay. So I just realized that you can put your finger on the through bolts and you can turn them counterclockwise and they will come out. So if you don't want to install the through bolts, you don't have to. You get everything in the box to do that job the way you want. I would very much recommend it. But you may not be able to drill that door for the hole at 12 and 6 for the 2 through bolts. 1 3/8 to 1 3/4, that answers that question. These locks, and I kid you not, another 700 or 800 others are going to a commercial tenant space, a mid-rise building in Midland, Texas. And there were hundreds of doors that we supplied there, and Dorma was a good choice for all of that. Competitive, good quality. The client's super happy, not a single failure with 800 locks. Perfect for those applications. Non-handed. Oh, one thing I wanted to point out, very important. 1/2-inch throw latch bolt. There's a reason they put the dimension there. If you look at a fire door label, just picking a random image here. Here we go. Perfect. Min latch bolt throw, 1/2-inch single for single. 1/2-inch for single, 3/4 inch for pairs. What that means is the 1/2-inch throw of the latch, the projection of the latch, if it's a fire-rated door and it's a single door, you're okay. But if your label states 3/4 inch for pairs, this lock is not okay, and they don't make a 3/4 latch. So if you're doing a fire-rated pair of doors, the Dorma C500 is not an option for you. Dorma has an option, it's just not this option. Okay? That's pretty important stuff. Don't paint yourself in a corner. I've had people order lots of locks and then realize that, oh my gosh, I have to order an entire new lock because I can't get a 3/4 inch projection latch in my $30, Builder's Super Mega Store lock set. Nothing against that at all. I'm just saying be mindful of what your requirements are. Finishes, polished brass, oil rub bronze, satin nickel, polished chrome, satin chrome. None of these finish codes should be used because all of this indicates either brass or a bronze base material. This cannot be made of brass. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see where they're telling us what the base material of the lever is. It's very likely in here. But I don't see it, so I'm pretty sure it's zinc, which is fine. This is a grade 2 inexpensive lock. And this is really what I love about Dorma. They really, really do a great job at giving you the options. Like I said earlier, this structure you're going to see throughout their entire catalog. Your product family, your function, your type, and then you can't forget anything. That's what's really great about what they do here. You can't forget anything. I would, as I said earlier, I'd like a little page number here to tell me, okay, I want to look at functions. What page do I go to? But I am really reaching to find something not complimentary to say about this whole concept. They do a great job. You can do, obviously, lots of keyways in the C500 series. This lock, I believe it was all Schlage C. I don't recall. But they'll do these different keyways, which are nice. They will do small format, interchangeable core as well. That's what all this refers to. So conventional core or small format. They don't do large format removable core. LR lever. I don't think they list the rows separately, but that's where the C is coming in for me, LRC. LR, LC, LG. Obviously the LR is going to be your common one. Okay. ADA compliant levers feature solid cast handles. I got to tell you, you know, they're using BHMA codes for that, and they're saying that these are solid cast. I'm just, you know, if I was looking at the catalog only, I'd have to conclude that the material was either brass or bronze. What I mean by that is when you use the BHMA codes, 605, the 3-digit numbers, that tells us the finish and the base material. All of these mean either brass or bronze, not zinc at all. There's no code for zinc base that I'm aware of in BHMA. Our functions, we're doing obviously a 10 function, which is an F75. If you wanted to find, if the architect told you F75 and said use Sargent, Schlager, Dorma, you're going to look in their catalogs for the F75, and then you're going to say, oh, it's a passage set. Okay, that's easy. So that that ANSI code is really helpful because it allows you to convert a function to any manufacturer at all. No problem with converting that. As long as you find an F84 in another catalog, all of this is going to be exactly the same. No deviation. 3 strikes are available. 5001. ANSI, T-strike, full lip strike, or D-strike we call it. They do have latch bolts. The function of the latch bolt, based on your back set and how you want the plate treated, the size of the plate and the corner treatment will give you different part numbers. So 40 derivatives of latch bolts from Dorma just for this one unit alone. So you have to specify all of that. And this catalog is a great intro into the world of, hey, how do I write my part number? It's right here. This is how you do it. So if you are expressing your need to someone else, like maybe if you're an architect and you're expressing that need to a distributor or to a client or to a manufacturer, put it in their language, because this is the way the factory is stating, here's how I want you to tell me the information. This is the way their system is built. This is the way their technical support people, what I mean to say is their customer service people are mostly built to understand. Okay, so they have your latch, they have your strike. They do want to know the door thickness. Is it necessary to put all of this there? The answer is it's not. If you omit the door thickness and the catalog says we're going to ship you a lock for 1 3/4 thick door unless you tell us otherwise, you don't need to put that there. However, I find that it's nice to get into the habit of just always putting all the data there because it reinforces the entire concept of what Dorma is talking about. You don't forget to tell us or to tell someone something. I need to know that. You might tell me that the door is, in a different lock, you might tell me that the door is 2.5 inch. And then I'm going to say, okay, let's look at the strike. A 5001 strike, are we talking about a 5001 that has 1 1/4 lip length? Well, that's not going to work. If you have a 2 so you see my point. It kind of also helps determine ahead of time if there's going to be a mistake. My point of that is you're probably going to need an extended lip strike, and at that point the C500 series won't really be an option for you on this. Okay. They have a nice smattering of functions here. The typical office, entrance, classroom, storeroom function. And then small format. Small format was invented by Frank Best, the founder of Best Lock Company. Cloned and copied countless times by countless manufacturers, namely Falcon and Arrow, obviously Dorma. They are using these very common small format keyways that exist. Okay. Now, let's wrap up this video on camera. In conclusion, I'm happy with the lock. This is the first time I've dissected a Dorma C500 series. Why I'm happy with the lock is, now that I understand it, I can go through bolts or not. I would always go that route unless I couldn't or a client couldn't, but I really do like how that exterior spring cage really engages the chassis. That's good stuff right there. And I'm happy with that at all. Well, I'll tell you, and I had mentioned earlier 800 locks on a job in Midland, Texas. I bet it's got everything to do with that they haven't had any sort of breakdown or failure. That project is 14 months old at this point. And those doors, let's say, have been swinging for 9 months or gosh, 11 months, I would say, or a year. Not a single problem with those. Client wanted the same lock he got last time. That's, I tell my vendors, my manufacturers, keep me fat, happy, and ignorant, and you'll have a happy customer. Make it easy on me is what I'm saying. Keep me fat and happy and ignorant. Don't let me know the inner workings because you just keep coming back. And I think Dorma has done that here. They keep us fat, happy, and ignorant, meaning you don't, unfortunately, you don't have to get exposed to, why isn't my lock working? You don't have to dive into that. They've done a good job with that, in my opinion. Okay. There we go. Zinc dichromate, mostly steel. Definitely not that lever. You know what? This scale plate's going to... I bet the scale plate is brass. I bet that's what it is. And the fact that those finishes, you can tell that I'm really interested to know. I'm going to find out and I'll update this product catalog. Those finishes match really well. I will put a message, an email out to my tech support fella who I mentioned earlier and find out what the base material is at, just because it's obviously bothering me. So the name Dorma is synonymous with the complement of exit devices, door closers, lock sets. When it comes to door closers, they've got a full complement. They have solutions that other people don't have, whether it be overhead concealed, in the floor closers, in ground, or surface closers. Almost everyone's favorite smartphone. Every time you walk into one of those retail stores, it's a Dorma closer in the floor every time that I've seen one. And we all know the traffic that can hit that manufacturer's retail store, especially when a new phone is released. And those closers, they do a good job. Sometimes you have a problem with, unrelated to Dorma, but an exterior door needing to be handicap compliant, a reduced opening force means a reduced closing force. The complaint was that doors don't get closed. Yeah, you have a windy condition and you're only allowing me 8.5 pounds of pressure to get the door closed. And those are like 3 foot by 9 foot, half or 3/4 inch Herculite doors that they've put there. So the great complement of closers. They've got solutions to closers that other people don't. Their 9000 series exit device I've reviewed. It's a solid piece of equipment. I wouldn't hesitate to use their product. At some point, I'm going to be taking the AHC exam, and I do have to determine whose manufacturers I'm going to write the test in. And while I would love to use Schlage, because that's the easy one, that's the one I'm most familiar with, I would love to use Sargent, because that's the one I don't know nearly as much about, so it'll force me to learn it. I'm probably going to use Dorma because I really gravitate towards that well laid out structure with the how to order. No one else really does that. Von Duprin has a nice setting, a nice how to order on their exits, really nice. But the problem with Von Duprin, I think, is that they list every possible option, not just showing you what's permissible for that exact derivative of what you're working on. So there you go. Link below this video to the manufacturer's page will allow you to review not only all of the Dorma products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. If you have any questions on the Dorma C510 cylindrical lever passage set or any other Dorma product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.